Right now, we are in a rare time, in a rare circumstance in this country where actually a revolution could be made. And if you're somebody who is sick and tired of all the ways that people are being treated as less than human, if you've ever wondered what it would mean for black people to be free, I mean really be free, and not just black people, but all of humanity, and what those two things have to do together, then you're in the right place today. And this bookstore is the political, cultural, and intellectual center of a movement for an actual revolution. And it's where people can come to get into why a revolution is necessary, why it's possible, and what it's all about in the new society that it's aiming for. So that's a little bit about Revolution Books. The Revolution Club, you see people wearing these Revolution Nothing Less t-shirts. This is a force that's getting organized in this, all over this country in a movement for revolution right now. And so tonight, the program that we are having is actually part of how we're building this movement for revolution and the leadership that we have to actually make this revolution real. And so tonight, our program is going to be a talk by Carl Dix. We're very happy that he's here tonight, on why I follow Bob Avakian, an old white guy who's the most radical revolutionary leader on the planet, and why you should too. And this talk that he's going to give today, it's going to draw on an article by Bob Avakian for the liberation of, on the article Bob Avakian for the liberation of black people and the emancipation of all humanity. This article, it's available at revcom.us, but you all have copies of it here tonight. And there's also a video, I believe, that we're going to show here at Revolution Books next Saturday that also can be seen on the Revolution Nothing Less show, which is on YouTube. And Carl Dix is a longtime revolutionary. He's an advocate for the new communism forged by Bob Avakian. And in 2011, along with Dr. Cornel West, he launched a civil disobedience campaign to stop, stop, and frisk. And he also did time in the penitentiary for refusing to go to Vietnam. So with no more further ado, join me in welcoming Carl Dix.
And actually, how we're going to start things today is we're going to show you a little bit from the video that was done off of that article that Emma talked about, Bob Avakian for the liberation of black people and the emancipation of all humanity, because I figured it'd be a good way to introduce you to who Bob Avakian is, where he came from, how he developed. And for those of you who have seen it, watch it again, because you may find some new things in there that you didn't see the first time.
Liberation of black people and the emancipation of all humanity. One of the things that comes through most powerfully in Bob Avakian's memoir is that a profound hatred for the oppression of black people has been a defining part of Bob Avakian's life. From the time as a teenager, he learned about the lives of the black people with whom he developed deep ties of friendship. Never feeling that because he is white, it is not his place to be involved in the struggle against this oppression, but on the contrary, determined to contribute whatever he could to this struggle, Bob Avakian, B.A., from the time he worked closely with the Black Panther Party in its revolutionary days in the 1960s, has made the liberation of black people a defining part of his life's commitment and work. As he developed as a revolutionary communist and emerged as the foremost revolutionary leader and thinker in the world, this commitment has become even deeper and has been strongly interwoven with a dedication to the emancipation of all humanity from every form of oppression and exploitation. Listen to Noche Diaz read what B.A. has written about his life's work.
Why was I doing the work I was doing? Once again, we're back to for whom and for what. I wasn't doing this work for myself. When I was young, in middle school, and then even more so in high school, my life got changed in a very major way by coming into contact with people that I hadn't really known that much before, in particular black people. I started learning about their situation and how that relates to what goes on in this society as a whole. I was drawn to the culture, not just the music and art overall, but the whole way of going through the world of the black people who became my friends and the world they introduced me to. And I came to the point of recognizing These are my people. Now, I knew they had a different life experience than I did, but these are my people. I don't see a separation. It's not like they are some other people over there who are going through all this and somehow that's removed from me. These are my people. And then I began to recognize more deeply what people were being put through, the oppression they were constantly subjected to, the horrors of daily life, as well as the bigger ways in which the system came down on them. And as I went further through life and began to approach the question of what needs to be done about this, and was introduced to taking up a scientific approach to this, I realized that my people were more than this. I realized that my people were Chicanos and other Latinos and other oppressed people in the U.S. They were people in Vietnam and China. They were women. They were the oppressed and exploited of the world. And through some struggle and having to cast off some wrong thinking, I've learned that they are LGBT people as well. These are my people, the oppressed and exploited people of the world. They are suffering terribly, and something has to be done about this. So it is necessary to dig in and systematically take up the science that can show the way to put an end to all this and bring something much better into being. You have to persevere and keep struggling to go forward in this way. And when you run into new problems or setbacks, you have to go more deeply into this rather than putting it aside and giving up. But this is why I've been doing the work I've been doing.
Bob Avakian for the liberation of Black people and the emancipation of all humanity. Bob Avakian grew up in Berkeley, California. Unable, because of a life-threatening illness, to be directly involved in struggles taking place against racial oppression for several years after graduating from high school in 1961, B.A. nevertheless closely followed and strongly supported the civil rights movement in the early 1960s, and at the same time was influenced by and supportive of the militant stand and role of Malcolm X.
We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
This was reflected in an article that B.A. wrote at the age of 19 in 1962, supporting the struggle of Black people. This article was submitted to the liberal magazine Saturday Review. Although the article was not published, the editor-in-chief of the magazine, Norman Cousins, personally replied, indicating that although the magazine had chosen not to publish the article, he recognized that the article spoke in a strikingly compelling way to very important questions. Having recovered from his illness in 1964, B.A. became actively involved in the free speech movement at the University of California in Berkeley, where he was a student. The central issue of this movement was the right of students to carry out activity on the campus in support of the civil rights movement.
The idea that the university could come out with regulations prohibiting civil rights activity when people were dying in the South.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
B.A. was among the 800 who were arrested during the occupation of the University Administration Building, which was the high point of the movement and led to winning its demands. As the civil rights movement increasingly gave way to a more militant Black liberation movement in the second half of the 1960s, B.A. was strongly influenced by this. He left the university and dedicated his life to working for radical change. As a result of direct contact and discussions with Hugh Newton and Bobby Seale, the founders of the Black Panther Party, and getting to know Eldridge Cleaver, who also became a leader of the BPP, BA worked closely with the Black Panther Party from its earliest days and at the height of its revolutionary role and influence. In 1967, BA attended rallies and spoke at one of the rallies held by the BPP in North Richmond to protest the killing there of Denzel Dow, part of the long and continuing chain of murders of Black people by police. In 1968, when Huey Newton was facing murder charges as a result of a shootout with Oakland cops, BA spoke, along with a number of key figures in the Black liberation movement, including Stokely Carmichael, Rap Brown, James Foreman, and the leaders of the Black Panther Party, at a Free Huey rally held in the Oakland Auditorium on the occasion of Huey Newton's birthday.
I'm going to bring you on now a member of the Peace and Freedom Party who has worked diligently on behalf of Brother Huey. I give you Bob Avakian.
And I want to say that I wouldn't be on the stage, we wouldn't have been at the Oakland Induction Center if it weren't for the courageous people, the masses of people and the leaders who led and participated in the Black liberation struggle all these years. Because they're the ones that taught us. They're the ones that forced us to face what the reality of America and this system was all about. And in this sense, we say that not only are Black people a vanguard, but they're an inspiration. We don't expect them to liberate us. We have to do that for ourselves. But they have inspired us to begin that struggle to end this imperialist, racist, colonial system once and for all.
BA worked tirelessly to build support, including among white people, for the demand to free Huey. At a Free Huey rally at the courthouse in Oakland where Huey Newton's trial was being held, BA was arrested for desecrating, burning the American flag. During this time, at the invitation of BPP leaders, BA wrote a number of articles for the Black Panther newspaper. At a rally of thousands led by the Black Panther Party on May 1st, 1969, BA spoke of the need for revolution and called on white people in particular to more actively take part in movements for revolutionary change in the U.S. and to support such movements throughout the world.
And let me say one thing to the white people in the audience. Now, you know, Bobby has been saying for a long time, we will not fight racism with racism. We refuse to stoop to the level of a racist to hate somebody because of the color of his skin. Well, that's fine. But I see a lot of white people walking around and say, oh, good. Now the Black Panther Party don't hate me. I can go on about my business. That's a cop-out. And if you act like that, the Black Panther Party will hate you. Not because you're white, but because you ain't taking care of business to organize other people. Teach them the need to support the Black liberation movement led by the Black Panther Party as a strong, fearless voice against American imperialism, and to link up with all the people in Vietnam, in China, in Angola, in Latin America, and everywhere else who are standing shoulder to shoulder to drive this vicious beast out of the way and out of the pages of history.
By the beginning of the 1970s, millions of people in this country were in favor of some kind of revolutionary change, but they faced profound challenges. How could this revolution be made? Or was it even possible to make a revolution here, up against such powerful forces of oppression and repression? Which were the key forces that had to be mobilized to have a real chance to carry out such a revolution? What kind of leadership was needed? And what methods and approaches should that leadership be based on? The difficulties in confronting and seeking the answers to these hard questions, combined with brutal and often murderous repression by the powers that be, led many revolutionary organizations, including the Black Panther Party, to split and end up departing from the road that could lead to real revolution.
Okay, so like I said, I wanted to give you a taste of who Bob Avakian is, where he came from, how he developed. So now let's get into it. Tonight, we're going to get into why I follow Bob Avakian, an old white guy who's the most radical revolutionary on the planet, and why you should too. Now, there's a short answer to that and a long answer. I'm going to start with the short answer. I follow Bob Avakian because he's the most important political thinker and leader on the planet today. There's never been a revolutionary in this country like Bob Avakian. He's forged a whole new framework for human emancipation, the new communism. He's developed a strategy for making revolution in a country like this. Now think about it, a powerful imperialist country. He's developed a strategy for making revolution, bringing this imperialist beast down. It's a strategy that you can find in a talk that he gave, Why We Need an Actual Revolution and How We Can Really Make Revolution, on the website revcom.us. He's also written a blueprint for the kind of society that could be brought into being right after a successful revolution, and how that society could be led and developed to work on ending oppression and exploitation once and for all, including the oppression that black people suffer under in this country. Avakian knows how to be free, and that Constitution is available here, by the way. Constitution for a new socialist republic in North America. Bob Avakian knows how to get free. And Bob Avakian is a leader whose heart is with the people. You saw in the film talking about how he came to see that these are my people, people who had different life experiences, people who he didn't know what they were going through. But as he came to see that and understand it through interacting with people in high school like that, he came to see that these people were his people, and to see that they were suffering unnecessarily, and that suffering was unjust and it needed to stop. And he threw himself into the fight to stop that. But he didn't just throw himself in, he took the responsibility to lead it. And again, as it said in the film, he never felt like, well, it's bad what's happening to black people, it's bad what's happening in Vietnam, but I'm a white person here in America. That's not my struggle. I can't get involved in that. That's somebody else's fight. That was never his understanding. That was never how he approached things. And that's an important thing for today, when far too many people view it like, well, I got to stay in my lane. This is my struggle here. I can wish other people well, but I can't really get into that fight. So this is the short answer. It's because of the work that Avakian has done, the leadership that he's giving to the fight to end the oppression of black people and end all oppression and exploitation and emancipate humanity. And it's because of the kind of person that Bob Avakian is. That's why I follow him. And it's why you should become a follower of Bob Avakian too, if you want to see all the unnecessary suffering in the world ended. Now, before I get into, that was the short answer. You may think, damn, that was kind of long, Carl. No, but that was the short one. I'm going to get into the long one, but before I do that, let me say a little bit about what I mean when I say you should become a follower of Bob Avakian. Because we ain't saying you should line up behind us, who line up behind him, and just, march in step, head down, following him blindly. That's not what being a follower of Bob Avakian means. What it means is deeply engaging the work that he's done, learning from it, learning from and being grounded in the scientific method and approach that he takes, looking deeply at reality, how it's developing, what's driving it, how it got the way that it is, which then opens up the possibilities to change it, becoming somebody who can get into that, and then wield that to enlist others in this movement for an actual revolution that is aiming to overturn all of that suffering and all the messed up shit that's going on in the world. That's what being a follower of Bob Avakian is. That's the challenge that I'm putting out to you tonight. So now let me get into that longer answer that I promised you. on why I follow Bob Avakian and why you should too. It does intersect with my short answer because it steps off from the reality that we need a revolution. We need a real revolution to end the savage oppression that this country has inflicted on black people here, and to emancipate all of humanity and end all of the unnecessary suffering in the world. Okay, so why do I say we need a revolution as opposed to other approaches? Well, let's look at the oppression of black people. Just a little while ago, I spoke on the 100 years since the Tulsa Race Massacre, right here in Revolution Books, when white mobs rampaged through a black neighborhood in Tulsa called Greenwood, also called Black Wall Street, and destroyed every home, every school, every business, every church in that neighborhood, murdering hundreds of black people, rendering thousands more black people homeless. The people who did this were well known. These people didn't sneak in the night and do it under the cover of darkness. They just marched right in and did it, bragged about it. They didn't have cell phones then, so they couldn't take selfies, but they put it out there that they did this. No one has ever been punished for it. And this is not an isolated horror. There were dozens of massacres like this that happened to black people. Tulsa was right after World War I, and there were dozens grouped right around then. But then we could go back to the 1890s, Wilmington, Delaware, where there was a similar mob rampage and massacre. We could go back to the 1870s. We could come back up to the 1940s and 50s. This was something that happened again and again and again. And this was on top of the thousands of lynchings of black people by white mobs in this country. And we can walk that right up to today. Because when black people get lynched today, it's usually not a white mob that did it, or not just a white mob. It's sometimes a mob of police officers. Sometimes it's one police officer. That's the form it takes today. Police inflicting brutality and even murder on black people, and almost never being punished for these crimes. This official terror, together with mass incarceration, form the spearhead of the many ways this system enforces unequal conditions on black and other oppressed people in this country. And what all this amounts to is an overall assault that has genocidal proportions. And when I say that, I ain't trying to hype it up. And we can talk about this more in the discussion, because we are talking about a genocide here. And I'm not saying it started with Donald Trump either. He intensified it, but the system was carrying out a slow genocide against black people well before he came on the scene. We could also look at this in relation to attempts to suppress black people's right to vote. I mean, black people didn't have a right to vote until after the Civil War ended slavery, formally ended slavery. They got the right to vote with a series of amendments, 13, 14, and 15, after the Civil War. But from the moment they got that right, whites who had fought in the Confederacy and supported the Confederacy fought to take that right back from them. That's when some of the first massacres began to happen. Colfax, Louisiana, other places. One thing that held them back was that there were federal troops from the Union Army still in the South. But in 1876, when the federal troops were pulled out of the South, then the white supremacists, the racists, went on a rampage, and black people's right to vote was snatched back. And it reached the point where in the southeastern United States, there was almost no black people who ever got to vote. And it stayed that way for decades until the 1960s, with the burgeoning of the civil rights movement that was referred to in the film. One of the things it fought for was that right to vote. And that, plus changes in the world, and we can talk about that too, where that fit in, created conditions where black people regained the right to vote. Civil Rights Act gave them that right, specified some things that had to be done in it, and it also said that the states that had spent decades stopping black people from being able to vote had to clear any changes they wanted to make to voting so that they couldn't run right back up and start snatching it back again. That part of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act was gutted by the Supreme Court not too long ago. So here we have that right that black people didn't get till after the Civil War, lost again within 10 years, fought for decades to get back, is being snatched away again. What we have is an all-out white supremacist assault on the humanity of black people. And look, I gotta say this, because I'm looking at the people who are waging the fight to defend the right to vote, and that's important. It's important that they wage that fight. But I got a bone to pick with them, because almost all of them will say, what we're doing here isn't about black people. It isn't about any one group of people. It's about everybody. This threatens everybody's right to vote. Bullshit. No, these motherfuckers have strategically and surgically put together laws that will target black people, that will target Latinos, that will target indigenous people who live on the reservation, and frankly, that will target students too, because they will accept for identification, they're putting up these voter ID provisions. They will accept for identification your hunting license. They will not accept a university ID. Think about that. See, and all of this is being put together to target the people that they don't think will vote for the fascist candidates that are being put up. You know, that's where all this is coming from. So look, the reality is that this savage oppression has been going on from the beginning of this country, even before this country was this country, because slavery predates the country. People have fought it heroically, put their lives on the line. Some even lost their lives. And still today it continues. And in the midst of that, you have the Republifascists. I don't call them Republicans, they're Republifascists, because that's what they are about. That's what their program comes down to, are pushing an agenda that would speed that genocide up that I talked about. Remember after the election when Trump said he couldn't have lost this? He pointed to Atlanta, Detroit, and Philadelphia as cities where there was massive voter fraud. What he was really saying was it is not legitimate for black people to decide that I don't get to be president again. Those votes should not be allowed to determine the presidential election. And then his minions around the country are moving to see to it that that doesn't happen. They're moving to see to it that it becomes harder and harder for black people to vote, harder and harder for other oppressed people to vote. And they are also moving to put in place laws and regulations that say that if the Republicans in a state house in, say, Georgia, decide they don't like the way the election came out, they can throw the election out. Which is what he tried to get them to do with this election, remember. He was calling around the country, can you find me 12,000 votes? Can you find me 15,000 votes? Can you get me 20,000? It was like he was running a fucking auction. Well, this now they're setting it up so that they don't have to look for the votes. They can say, we don't think this is legitimate. We're going to throw these votes out. They want to rig it so that anybody who's not with the fascist program will not get elected again. This is what they're talking about doing. Now, the Democrats have opposition to this, and they voice that opposition, but they are not a real answer to it. Look at the whole thing on voting rights. Biden gave this speech, which they said, oh, he gave a, very strong speech on voting rights. He said to these Republican fascists, he didn't call them fascists, he didn't call them by their name, but he said to them, have you no shame? Well, the motherfuckers have no shame. They've already showed you that. What you gonna say that to them for? They don't give a fuck. Oh, shame? You don't know us very well. No. So that's what he put out there. Then what did he say for his action plan? He says, we're gonna go into Congress and we're gonna come together and solve this problem. He's going to come together with the fascists who are causing the problem in the first fucking place to solve the problems that they're creating. Right. Think about that. That's like you a farmer, you got a hen house, but you've been having a problem. The foxes have been coming in your hen house, eating up your chickens. You say, foxes, have you no shame? Then you say, we're going to do something about this. I'm going to get together with the foxes and we're going to do something about all the chickens being eaten up in our hen house. No, you ain't. And see, it comes down to the same thing here. They do not have an answer for it. And part of it is because they represent the same system that the fascists do. They have a different plan for how to keep it together and in effect. The fascists are saying, let's throw out all of that inclusion, all of that flim-flam stuff you like to do to keep people thinking that they're a part of the way this thing runs. Let's just bring the hammer down. The Democrats be like, no, man, this flim-flam has worked. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep drawing people in, because you notice police terror. That's something I know a lot about. I've worked on this for decades. We've tracked the numbers of the police massacring, murdering people. Those numbers don't go up and down depending on whether there's a Democrat or a Republican in the White House. They remain pretty steady because both sides of the ruling class are united on, we need to have our frontline enforcers out there brutalizing, terrorizing, and murdering people that we have no future for. That's something they're together on. They're at odds on some other things, but they come down to the same system. And we cannot rely on the Democrats to really wage a fight to stop these fascists. But that doesn't mean nothing can be done about it. And in fact, I think Emma mentioned this, but next Wednesday, Andy Z is going to be here in Revolution Books. Andy Z, who's a spokesperson for Revolution Books and also a co-host of the Revolution Nothing Less show. And he's going to talk on this new article by Bob Avakian, which I actually have. This is a rare time when revolution becomes possible. Why that is so and how to seize on this rare opportunity. And an important part of the reason is that this fight at the top is pulling the covers off of the system. It's exposing its real nature. That fight could end up being resolved in a way that's very, very bad, but it also is creating openings to bring about the conditions where an actual revolution could be launched in this country. It's not time yet, the conditions aren't here, but it opens up the possibility to do it. I'm going, like I said to Andy yesterday on the Revolution Nothing Less show, for those of you all who watched that, and more of you should if you don't, I said I'm going to leave the heavy lifting on that article to him. I'm just going to touch on it here and move on because I'm dealing with a different topic. So look, you can't deal with the savage oppression of black people by voting against it. You can't deal with it by saying, well, we're going to do some economic empowerment, or we're going to build independent institutions. This oppression is built into the fabric and framework of this system. That's why it's been there from the beginning. That's why it stays there, even when people fight heroically against it. Dealing with this is going to take a real revolution. Millions of people rising up to overthrow this system, meeting and defeating the system's institutions of violence, oppression, and going on to build a totally different and far better system in place of this fucked up one. That's what's needed to end the misery and degradation this system enforces on black people. And look, if this, the way this system mistreats black people, was the only thing wrong with this system, that would be reason enough to want to make revolution and get rid of the motherfucker once and for all. But it's far from the only problem. There's the way women are subjected to patriarchal degradation, dehumanization, and oppression based on just who they are, as well as oppression based on people's sexual orientation. There's the criminalization and deportation of immigrants, the way the capitalist imperialist system is destroying the environment of the planet, the wars for empire. All of these things are part of the way the system functions. They can't be reformed away. It's going to take a revolution, nothing less, to end them once and for all. And here's where I get back to my point about why I follow Bob Avakian. This revolution is necessary, it's possible, and you need serious leadership if you're going to pull it off with a real chance to win. Because revolution is difficult. Revolution is difficult anywhere, and it's especially difficult if you're trying to do it in the most powerful country on the planet. You need leadership that can figure out how you're going to assemble the necessary forces to have a real chance at winning. Leadership that at the same time can figure out what could be done to weaken the system's forces, to divide up those that are on its side. You need leadership that can even determine when is the time right to go for revolution. Because obviously if we ran out here now and went for revolution, we ain't got the people for it. We ain't got the forces for it. We'd be crushed. And you need leadership that can develop a strategy to go from where we are now when there are not enough forces for revolution, to build up those forces, to get ready and in position to go for it. And we have that kind of leadership. We have it in Bob Avakian. Bob Avakian has solved key questions of the revolution, the overall strategy for revolution, the ultimate goal of the revolution, how to realize it, how to go from where we are now towards that. How do you assemble the forces? What's the relationship between fighting to eliminate the oppression of black people and fighting to emancipate all of humanity? Because Avakian has said and really meant that there never will be a revolution in this country that doesn't make as one of its focuses and foundation fighting to end the oppression of black people. And there never should be one. See, and here he's not just, he is making a moral statement. Any revolution in this country that does not go straight at ending this horrific oppression is basically saying we're going to leave part of the foundation of this system intact. That's wrong. That should not be the way it's gone at. But even more than that, if you're going to make a revolution, you actually have to unleash and involve people that this system weighs on. And black people are among the people who have been weighed on by this system the worst from the very beginning and up to today. Bringing to them a sense that things don't have to be this way. Bringing to them a force that is out there working to end the way things are. Bringing to them the understanding that we have leadership for this in Bob Avakian. That's an important part of getting into position to assemble the forces necessary to have a shot at going for revolution with a real chance to win. This is the leader that we have, and we have to get with that leader. We have to dig into his work, and we have to follow him if we're really going to have a chance to get free. Because if you want to get free, if you really want to get free, if you want to see black people get free, then you need to follow the kind of leadership that can make this happen. And Bob Avakian, yes, he's an old white guy, but he is the revolutionary communist leader who has solved the questions of the revolution. Now, when I say this, when people hear me say this, I can see some of their minds working and saying, no way, Carl. No way I'm going to follow Bob Avakian. He's a white man. I can't follow a white man. You know, and I'm talking about mainly black people right now. I mean, we could get into it from other angles of women saying they can't see following a man, but let's focus in on this question of black people. Not with all the horrible things that white people have done to black people in this country. How could we trust him to have our best interest at heart? And see, you gotta go at it this way. You gotta want to see this suffering ended so bad that you're ready to get scientific about it. I want to see this shit stopped. So I need to find out what it'll take to stop it. I need to find leadership that is forging the way in how it could be stopped. I got to get with that leadership and I got to move on it. And see, look, there have been revolutionary leaders in this country previously. I mean, Malcolm X. He was the most radical and revolutionary thing in the early 1960s here in this country. The Black Panther Party, which in its foundation said, we took what Malcolm had to say and we added a gun to it. You know, we was talking about, Malcolm was moving to that point. They took it right there. Picked up the gun and said, we're going for revolution right here in the belly of the beast. That movement, those forces were determined, serious, and heroic. But there were some questions that they weren't able to solve. They weren't able to get right down to, we need a revolution. What's the strategy for making that revolution? Who are the forces who could be assembled to make that revolution happen? What's the goal of it? What would the society look like? The Black Panthers, Malcolm, were not able to solve those questions. Now, I ain't dogging them or downing them for that because the system assassinated Malcolm. Assassinated him as he was making a key break in his life, moving from the Nation of Islam to be more out there as a radical and a revolutionary and looking to unite people, not on the basis of a religious approach, but in going after the oppression and exploitation and targeting the enemy that he was identifying on that. Not white people as the devil, but the system that enforced white supremacy. The Black Panthers were also right under the gun shortly after they were formed. Murderous attacks were launched on them. They got hit with legal attack after legal attack. They tried to frame them up. They had them in prison fighting all kinds of charges. So they weren't able to overcome that too, as it pointed out in the film. But they weren't able to overcome it, and Avakian has. That's why people got to look at that. We got to get scientific. Our criteria for leadership has to be not what's the color of the skin of the leader. What's the nationality of the leader? Is the leader a man or a woman? What's the sexual orientation of the leader? Those are not the criteria for determining who you're going to follow if you're serious about getting free. You got to get down to who is the leader who has the proven track record of the ability to lead in identifying the obstacles that we have to deal with, figuring out how to go at and overcome those obstacles. Now look, a lot of people, a lot of black people will say, but also a lot of other people will say, yeah, but still, I could follow a black person, but not a white person. Okay, well, let's talk about that. You could follow Barack Obama. And some people in this room probably did follow Barack Obama. thought it was a great advance when he became president. I had some people, actually it was some young white people, when I was saying we need a revolution, not a black president, they said to me at the inauguration festivities down in DC in 2008, we have made our revolution by voting Barack Obama into office. Well, what did you get for that? You got a situation where a black person was the main representative of the bloody-jawed beast that is the American empire. You got a situation where the Tuesday meetings, where they decided who they were going to assassinate in their drone strikes, and they did this every Tuesday. This was a regular thing. Well, you got a black person leading that. That's what you got by putting Obama in there. You got a president who set a record for deporting immigrants. Most of them immigrants from Mexico and Central and South America. This is what you got. And see, I used to tell people what Obama's presidency shows you is that this system was ready to put a black man in the White House, but they were not ready to stop their pigs from brutalizing and murdering black people, brown people, indigenous people, and other oppressed people. Now, there were some differences there between Obama and the guy he ran against, because you did get Obama saying, when Trayvon Martin was stalked and murdered by a racist vigilante, George Zimmerman, Obama said, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. And that moved a lot of people. But see, here's the problem. Obama didn't do shit to stop there being more Trayvons, more Jordan Davises, more Mike Browns, more Freddie Grays, more Breonna Taylors, more George Floyds. He didn't do nothing to stop that. And when people stood up after Freddie Gray was murdered in Baltimore, Obama didn't say Freddie Gray would look like his son. He called the people who were angry at Freddie Gray's murder thugs. That's what you got from Obama. Somebody throwing a few words your way, but actually working to pull you in behind the system and condemning people who tried to stand up against that system. That's because having cops, the frontline enforcers for the system, ready, willing, and able to instill terror is necessary for this system to keep people in the unequal and degrading conditions that it forces them in. So no, look, if you're serious about getting free, you got to get scientific about what it's going to take to do that. And again, that's especially important right now because those divisions and infighting at the top are opening up the possibility of creating the conditions where you could go all out for revolution when the time is right. And like I told you, Andy gonna get into that, do the heavy lifting. So I'm not gonna stay in my lane, but I'm gonna stay on this topic.
Your lane is good though. You're getting to the point.
And look, I know the history of the savage oppression black people have suffered at the hands of whites in this country. I know this oppression is still being rained down on black people today. But the question is, how do we stop it? What's it going to take to do that? And it's going to take a revolution. We got to assemble the forces that can make that revolution. And the potential to do that is there. Look at last year, after the murder of George Floyd. Look at the millions of people who flowed into the streets saying justice for George Floyd and calling for an end to white supremacy. There was a lot of black people in there. There was a lot of brown people in there. But there were also a whole lot of white people in there. If we can bring to many of those people an understanding of what it will take to ensure, get to a situation where there are no more George Floyds, no more Breonna Taylors, because the police force that has carried out those murderers has been disbanded and the system that they served has been overthrown, done away with through revolution. And what it would take to make that happen. If we could bring that understanding to people, we could begin to assemble the forces necessary for it. And they won't all be black. They won't all be black, brown, and indigenous. It will include many white people because there are white people who can be brought into this. That's how we have to go at it. And we have to be serious about the leadership for this. Avakian is a leader who has identified and broken through on these questions. They listed some of them up there. I laid them out. We have to go at it like he is the leader who has shown an ability to lead in getting ready and in position to make a revolution, has shown an ability to identify the questions and obstacles we'd be going up against and figuring out how to break through on them. That's how we have to go at it. And look, I know another aspect of this is, okay, Avakian's done some work, and the part of it that I've checked out seems to be pretty good. I respect the work that he's done, but how do I know I can trust this man? How do I know that I can rely on him to have the interests of black people at heart as he's building this fight to make revolution and emancipate all of humanity? How could I do that, especially given the history of this country? And again, I want to take you back to what was in the film. That's why we wanted you to get a sense of, well, where did this Avakian guy come from? You know, he didn't grow up as a small child with black people and brown people all around him. He grew up in an area in Berkeley, mainly white people. But then he went to school. He got involved in athletics, basketball, football. That had him running and hanging with a lot of black people. They would do things like go on trips. You get on a bus back then, they put you on a bus to ride to the next game you were going to if you were a football player, basketball player. They took long rides. They would talk. People would tell him about what it meant to be a black person in this country. And they would do it because they had a sense that this is a guy who would listen. This is a guy who would learn from these kinds of discussions. One of them even said to him, Bobby, because they used to call him Bobby, not Bob, Bobby. It's too bad you're white, because you would make a really good brother. That's what they thought about him. And look, not from the perspective of you would make a really good brother, but I feel the same way about Bob Avakian, because I know the man. I met him almost 50 years ago. At the time that I met him, he was a leader in a group called the Revolutionary Union that was working to try to put together a vanguard party that could be the leadership for the revolution in this country. And they had been working with a group that I was in, the Black Workers Congress, which, as its name indicates, was a black group. But we were also working for revolution. We also thought we needed a vanguard force. But then things broke down. I see, I'm gonna get to you, brother. Then things broke down over who should lead this party. The group that I was in was saying, oh, well, we can't have a white dude lead this party. Anybody else, Puerto Rican, black, Chicano, Asian, all of that was cool, but we can't have a white dude doing it. That was our position. And I happened to run into Avakian one night, actually in New York City. I lived in Baltimore, but I was in New York City. I needed a place to stay. I didn't know nobody. And somebody hooked me up with somebody who was going to give me somewhere to stay. And it just so happened that Avakian was staying there too. When he heard that I was there, he asked me, well, would you want to talk about some of the questions that are up between our groups? And I was like, well, sure, you know, because I want revolution. I trust that you want revolution, so we should be able to talk. I don't know that we can come to any agreement, but let's talk at least. So about 7, 8 o'clock at night, we started talking, and we started out on this thing of who should lead the revolution. And for a couple hours, we argued over that. And in this couple hours, he kept saying, well, let's look at this from the perspective of where we're trying to get to, the future that we're trying to bring into being. And at first it irritated me because he said, must have said it about 5 or 6 times in 2 hours. Until finally it clicked with me. He kept saying it because he actually meant it. We actually should be looking at where are we trying to get to and figuring out from there what we should do now to get there. Not where we are now and what are all the problems we got now and how can we out-argue one another over what to do next, but to look at where we needed to go. And it also struck me that, you know, I'd heard Avakian speak. I knew he was a dynamite speaker. And a little part of me was like, maybe I shouldn't even have this discussion with the dude because I may not be up to it. I might not be able to hold my own in it. But while we sharply differed and argued our positions, we listened to each other. Then we went on a little bit. We delved into history, and it turned out that both of us were interested in the history of the revolutions, previous revolutions. I had done some reading on the Soviet Union, on China. He had too. I actually didn't realize that night. He had actually read much more than me. But it wasn't like he lorded that over me. Well, I know much more than you do about that. When I raised some stuff, he listened. When I raised things that insights that he hadn't gotten, he like, oh, well, let's talk about that more. You know, and I got a sense that both this was a guy who was really going at things from the perspective of the future we needed to bring into being, and very determined to fight for that, but also willing to listen, wanting to hear what others had to say and evaluating it. Sometimes I'd say something and he'd say, I think that's wrong, Carl. Other times he'd say, well, you know, that's something, I hadn't thought about it that way. And it struck me that this is a guy who could both lead but also learn as he led, including learning from other people and their insights, including learning from them when they're wrong, because sometimes somebody raises something wrong and you try to get into it and take it apart and understand it. That helps you to understand things better. This was the kind of person that I met that night. Oh, and by the way, we argued, discussed, conversated until the sun came up the next morning. Neither one of us got any sleep, but that's because we were that into how we gonna get free, that we were ready to discuss it all night long. That's what we need. We need people who are that serious about getting free. We need them to be so serious that they're willing to be scientific about it and get into, and go places that might make you feel uncomfortable at first. Because you got to get out of your comfort zone to really break through on things. Let me just go back to it and wind things up here. Revolution is serious business. You got to answer some serious questions. How do we assemble the forces necessary to make a revolution? How do we go from where we are now, where there are not nearly enough people down with the revolution? Not nearly enough people who even know about Bob Avakian, let alone follow him. How do we coordinate millions of people rising up to overthrow the system when the time is right? And how do you even know when the time is right? Because you don't want to jump out there too soon. You could get crushed, but you also don't want to sit around and miss the chance to go for it. You can't do this without leadership, and we have leadership in Bob Avakian. And people need to get with that leadership, and we need to do it now, because we don't want to waste the opportunity at a time when the possibility for revolutionary change is opening up. So I want to read a quote from Bob Avakian that goes to what we're talking about tonight. There is the potential for something of unprecedented beauty to arise out of unspeakable ugliness. Black people playing a crucial role in putting an end at long last to this system which has for so long not just exploited but dehumanized, terrorized, and tormented them in 1,000 ways. Putting an end to this in the only way it can be done, by fighting to emancipate humanity, to put an end to the long night in which human society has been divided into masters and slaves. And the masses of humanity have been lashed, beaten, raped, slaughtered, shackled, and shrouded in ignorance and misery. So let's go to work on putting an end to that long night. That's what I follow Bob Avakian to do. That's why I follow him. And if you want to see that happen, I challenge you to follow him as well. So that's what I wanted to say. And, I mean, we want to open it up and get into it. I already had one hand going there.
My name is Jacob Azek, My name is Jacob Azeka, a resident of Harlem since 1972. And first of all, thank you for your excellent presentation. But in your discussion, I noticed something that is missing. You never talk about finances, about sponsors. Because the revolution sounds good, but you need resources. You talk of the leadership, okay, you have the brain like Malcolm X, you have the brain like Obama, you have the brain like W.E. Du Bois, but where is the money? And also, need volunteer. Don't forget, all this money that Donald Trump is raising, $75 million. Yes, I know the press are saying that he's holding on to this, but when they are having a rally somewhere, those volunteers are getting something in order for them, because they have to feed their family. You cannot fight revolution with an empty stomach. No, it just don't happen. So I stop right there. I just noticed you never talk about the money aspect and the sponsor. Sponsor. Corporation, athlete, people with big money, so on and so forth. That's all.
Okay, you have raised a very good point. You do not make a revolution without resources, financial resources, and human resources. I mean, back in the old days, we used to say freedom ain't free. And that would be our intro into calling on people to contribute. Now, let me just say this. Where we go for our funds, and we actually do go for our funds, in fact, this bookstore had a successful fundraiser that ended earlier this month, I understand, because they have to raise the funds to keep this institution open as a center for a movement for an actual revolution. The National Get Organized for an Actual Revolution tour just conducted a fundraising campaign, didn't quite reach their goal, and they continued it and extended it. One of the ways that they did it was through an online webinar where they put forward, here's what we're doing, here has been our experience in carrying it out, here has been our experience in involving people to help raise the money that's needed. And they talked about people who did dinners. I think the particular dinner was a barbecue, and they had me wishing I was in Los Angeles, because that's where the tour is right now, because they were cooking barbecue, selling dinners for the revolution. They had things like a revolutionary change jar. They would have jars that said revolutionary change. I can't pick it up because I ain't got any here.
We do have some. Where are they?
They're in the back.
Okay, you can go home with one tonight.
They had jars that said revolutionary change. And they'd say, we need revolutionary change. And they talk about the changes they needed in the world. And then they'd say, and we need revolutionary change. We need you to put your change in this jar. And see, that was one of the things that we saw and learned, and I believe the Revolution Club here in New York City has revolutionary change jars for people to take and leave. They're in the back on the table, and you can get yours tonight. But the point is, this is important for two reasons. One is we do need the money. That is very real. If we don't have the money, we're going to be like, okay, we want to put out.
Show and tell.
This is here. It says revolutionary change, and then it says here the system has no future for the youth. The revolution does. We need the money to be able to spread the word. We need the money to be able to move people. When George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, we got together an array of people to go up to Minneapolis, to be right there at ground zero on that, taking the message of the revolution to people as they stepped into the streets saying no more police murder and white supremacy. We were talking with them about what it would take to end police murder by police, to end white supremacy. You got to be able to do that. You don't have the resources, you can't do it. The other thing is, a way that people can enlist in the movement is through donating to the movement to support its activities. And see, some people, you're going to have people like me who throw themselves all the way into this. This is what I have done. Oh, okay. I've done it for about 50 years. I was wondering if I should out myself like that, because y'all was probably thinking, oh, he's about 40 years old. No, I've done this for 50 years. But then you're also going to have people who aren't able to do that, but who support the aims and the goals, who want to see you succeed. And what they might be able to do is make a contribution to help you succeed. That is their way of getting involved. They could even go beyond that and solicit contributions from others. And the one thing I will say is that major corporations are not our source of funding. Because major corporations are not the ones who are going to support a revolution to get rid of the system of capitalism, imperialism. Now, that doesn't mean that people who have done well in this system shouldn't be asked to contribute to a revolution, because there are people out there who have done well, but who see what's happening and hate it and want it to stop. It actually matters that major sports figures have been out calling out the horrors that this system perpetrates on people. I was reading a thing, Naomi Osaka, the most financially successful female athlete in the world today. Well, she also, last year's US Open, she came with 7 masks having the names of 7 different people who had been murdered by police. And she said, I came with 7 masks because if I win this tournament, that means I have to win 7 matches. I'm going to wear a different mask for each tournament, for each match. She did win the tournament, so she played 7 different games, and each time she walked out with a different mask of the name, with the name of a person who had been murdered by police. You know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, 4 other people. Someone like that should be approached to support the revolution. You know, and even though she's doing well, she does see the problems that other people are suffering, and she understands that's me. You know, I can't say because I'm doing well that ain't me for 2 reasons. One is it should hurt you when you see somebody else suffering unnecessarily. And 2, this is America. America goes after black people, and maybe if they recognized who you were, they might not do it. But they don't always recognize who you are, and maybe you'll get that cop who's like, I don't give a fuck who you are. All I know is that you're black. So my point is, you were right, both for reasons of finances, but for reasons of involvement. We have to take this up. Somebody was actually going to make an announcement about the revolutionary change jars, I believe, in a little bit. So wasn't that the case? Was that not the case?
Yes, it's the case. And we are going to do a barbecue outside on the sidewalk, so we'll make an announcement about that too.
Thank you.
So yes, also thank you for the talk. But I can see why you or someone, you know, else who is radical, you know, can decide to follow Bob Avakian. But I feel like, you know, if you look at the right and the fascists, they have, you know, people who are willing to fight. We saw that during, you know, January 6th. How do you go about, you know, convincing someone who is just not there yet, someone who believes that, who's a democratic socialist, who believes that, you know, you can achieve all this through democracy? How do you go about approaching them and convincing them to follow Bob Avakian, or at the very least, just getting them to see that revolution is necessary?
Okay, that's a good question too. And look, we got to bring reality to them. You know, people, they're working right now. They're bills that have been put on the table in Congress. The George Floyd Policing Act is on the table. 2 voting rights acts are on the table. You have to look at these acts and see whether they will accomplish what's needed or not. And, you know, the George Floyd Policing Act, it does things like make chokeholds by police illegal. But the problem is, it's actually already illegal to choke somebody to death. I mean, some states have explicitly said it's illegal for police to choke somebody to death. But even if you didn't explicitly say it, choking somebody to death is murder. So you write that into the, and here's the thing, New York State is one of the states where it's illegal. The state where Eric Garner was choked to death. Where the pig who choked Eric Garner to death and did it in a video that went nationwide and worldwide, walked free. You know, so it gets down to, we got to end this stuff. And don't bring to me, well, we're going to pass this bill that is going to make illegal things that are already illegal. And that's going to be our shot at doing this. The voting rights thing, I spoke about that a little bit earlier. I mean, you know, Biden is still saying we're going to work together with these people. And again, it's like, let's have a conference with the foxes and wolves about the problems at the chicken coop when the foxes and wolves are the problems at the chicken coop. So we got to take reality to people. We have to struggle with them because a lot of people who are in the Democratic Socialists of America actually do want to see these horrors stopped. You know, at least some of these horrors stopped, maybe all of these horrors stopped. And we got to just get into it with them. What will that take? How can we stop this horror? Bring out to me how, through the course of legislative sessions, putting together bills, etc., this is going to stop these horrors. And it's not just a thing, because some of them say, well, we're taking a longer view on it. You want some immediate results. We're taking a longer view. Well, that's actually not the distinction. The distinction is, if you're staying within the framework of the system that is causing the problems, then you're not going to be able to solve it. And we have to bring that out to people. We have to get into it with people. We have to argue with them over it. We have to go into struggle against these horrors. And as we build that fight, bring out to people what it's going to take to end this stuff. We stand together with you right now to fight this. That's why I got together with Cornel West. We started a campaign to stop, stop, and frisk. We did that because stop and frisk, just in case everybody here don't know what stop and frisk was and is, it's a policy where the police would stop somebody, and almost all the time the person they stopped was either black or Latino. They would frisk them, go through their pockets. They would look for reasons to arrest them. And 90%, or actually 85+% of the people they stopped were black or Latino. And 90% of the people they arrested were black or Latino from this. They would also do a thing. New York was a place where it was legal to have a small amount of marijuana on you. And that was before they made some even further changes in the law. But despite the fact that it was legal to have a small amount of marijuana, the police would stop and frisk you, and then they would arrest you for having the small amount of marijuana that it was legal for you to have. So then you're in jail trying to assert that you didn't violate the law. The police found this in your pocket. The police would say, oh, he held it out in public. Well, the only reason he held it out in public is because the police told him to hold it out in public. You know. So we have to fight these things, and we felt we had to fight that because it was not only degrading and dehumanizing, but it was threatening people's lives. You know, you end up in the hands of the police, and you don't know if you're going to survive that encounter. That's on the real. So we felt we had to target it, we had to go at it, we had to bring people who usually don't get stopped and frisked by the police into this fight. That's why it was important that Cornel West stood with it. We got a number of students of different nationalities to do it. We focused a lot of attention on it to try to show people that this was no good. And as a revolutionary, I tried to speak to people about why is stop and frisk happening like this? Where is it coming from? And that's where I actually worked on this thing about the slow genocide that I talked about. I realized that's what we're dealing with in this country, a slow genocide targeting black people. I tried to bring that out, and that the only way to solve this genocide wasn't to try to get more Democrats into office, such, all that kind of stuff. We got to get rid of the system that's generating this genocide. That's got to be the thing that we go through. We got to struggle with people. We got to bring the reality to them, take it apart, We got to get them to say, well, how are you really going to get at this reality, and struggle over their answer around it. That's what it's got to be. That's what it's got to come down to. We have to reach out everywhere we can on it, and we have to bring forward and mobilize people who are beginning to see this. Because one thing that does hold a lot of progressive people back is that they don't see a lot of people moving in a revolutionary way. Because the thing that made a big difference in the 1960s was when black people stood up. It affected society very broadly. It had an effect on other people. You know, I've talked to people who ended up in the Young Lords Party, and they were like, well, you know, when black people stood up, it kind of got us to thinking we should stand up too. I've heard that from Asians as well, you know, other people. And I've also heard from a lot of white people from that period that black people standing up brought forcefully to their attention the horrors that were going on, how it was unjust and should not be tolerated. But we got to work on that too. We have to actually mobilize a force that is out there standing up for and promoting revolution. That's why we made the move that we made on June 12th, was it? When we marched, we held a march for revolution. You know, it wasn't a demand for this concession or that concession. It was a march declaring that we need a revolution. Well, we have to continue to do stuff like that, as well as engaging in struggle with people over what it's going to take, and coming together with people in battles against struggles, political struggles, against various forms of oppression. So that's how I see going at that. I thought I was going to be more concise than I ended up being, but that happens. Do you want to?
Here?
Yeah, her.
So first off, this has been absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much for everything. But I guess my big question right now is intersectionality, because, you know, as someone who is a queer autistic Jewish person, you know, I'm always thinking, like, how does this, you know, piece of the revolution, or how does this event or whatever, you know, how is it able to accommodate me? Do I have to hide a piece of who I am? And I also recognize that, you know, the plight of black people who are queer, the plight of black people who are disabled, you know, is completely different than black people who are not queer or who are not disabled, for example. So I'm just wondering about, you know, intersectionality with Avakian, and, you know, where it has a place in the revolution, and how is the revolution accessible, particularly for people with disabilities?
Okay. Let me just say this. You said that black people who are queer, black people who are disabled, they have completely different situation than black people who aren't that. Well, no, it's not completely different. They have, no, there's distinction. And I recognize that distinction, but we have to actually understand white supremacy comes at black people, okay? And that needs to be recognized both by black people and by everybody else too. And there's some struggle that's involved in that, because particularly some of your old-time religious leaders don't like this thing of black people who have different sexual orientations, and they'll go to the Bible or wherever the fuck they go to come up with why that's wrong. Well, they are wrong. And see, how I come at this and how we come at this is the interest of humanity. Because I may be straight, but if humanity is suffering unnecessarily, then, like Avakian said in the thing, these are my people. And that's how we go at that, and we work to bring others to that stance, so that it isn't like, well, there's a lane for people who are queer, there's a lane for people who are disabled. If some of the queer people are disabled, those lanes intersect. No, it is all suffering. It is all unnecessary. Things don't have to be this way. And we have to bring as many people as possible to an understanding that it doesn't have to be this way, that this suffering is unnecessary, and we need to take the responsibility to act to end this suffering in the only way it could really be done, through revolution. And then we have to build a movement for revolution that is accessible to everybody. I mean, I had a brother-in-law who's passed away now, who was a severe epileptic. And he would have his times when you couldn't even really get nothing going with him. But then he would have his better times. And in his better times, he would be like, well, is there anything I can do for the revolution? And his epilepsy held him back from a lot of things. But if you could come up with something that he could do within the constraints that his physical situation brought on him, then he would do it. And see, so then we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this? Because we're used to going about it a certain way. He can't roll the way that some of us roll, but he wants to roll. So we needed to come up with a way for him to roll. And just to wind the story up, he had a lot of experience doing mailings because he had done it for a particular black elected official when he was the first black elected official running for office in Baltimore. And he was dissatisfied. He thought he had wasted his effort with that. But whenever we had to get a mailing done, he was like, well, here's how you do a mailing. In his good period, he could break it down for us, show us how to do it. And he would love to do it. So that's what we have to do. We have to, one, come at it from the interest of humanity. That's not just a mantra on our part. That's how we look at the world. And from that perspective, these are my people. Their suffering is unnecessary, and we have to act to stop that suffering and do what's necessary to do that. And that does come down to making revolution. You seem to be walking around like you wanted to.
Oh, no. I could say something. Okay.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to just share with the audience the points of attention that the Revolution Club lives by today, and it embodies the future that we're fighting for. There are 6 points. I'm not going to read them all here, but I will read 1 or 2 of them. And, you know, there are people here who are wearing the Revolution Nothing Less t-shirts. From the Revolution Club, you can talk to them and find out how you can also be part of a force that's embodying these principles today. And erecting, you know, a stronger pole for revolution among the people in society. One of them is, we stand with the most oppressed and never lose sight of their potential to emancipate humanity, nor of our responsibility to lead them to do that. We work to win people of all backgrounds to take part in the revolution and do not tolerate revenge among the people. That's one of them. And another one is, we fight for a world where all the chains are broken. Women, men, and differently gendered people are equals and comrades. We do not tolerate physically or verbally abusing women or treating them as sexual objects, nor do we tolerate insults or jokes about people's gender or sexual orientation. So I encourage everybody to leave tonight with a copy of this and, you know, connect with the Revolution Club and think about how every possible way to be part of a force that's representing in society for these principles. Okay. Well, let me go there and then there.
Okay, I think I missed some of the lecture, but what I heard was pretty interesting. This is what I'm hearing as a criticism against the Communist Party. One criticism that I hear is that you would strike down all relationships, and I don't know if this is true, that parents wouldn't be able to raise their children even. That sounds kind of crazy, so I want to address that. But I mean, in other words, that you are so extreme in wanting to eradicate relationships, and your view, this is what I've heard, is that all relationships, in your opinion, in your group's opinion, is viewed as, all relationships are viewed as oppressive. So I guess husband and wife, there wouldn't be, or any type of man-woman, continual man-woman relationship. There wouldn't be any, I guess, parental relationship somehow. It wouldn't be just your boss and you, or something like that. It would be, even family relationships would be eradicated. And I'd like you to address that. And then also, you speak of Mr. Avakian as being the leader. I'm assuming that he wouldn't be the only leader, that there would be others, because I'm just thinking that if this were successful, then one way to prevent it from remaining successful would be to eliminate the leader. I mean, that's what's been happening with a lot of organizations. You said Malcolm X, you said, and you can go down the line. So I would think that you probably don't have him as the only one that would be visible and on top. I mean, you're visible, but it seems like you're not all the way at the top. I could be wrong, but if you would just address those two things, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I mean, you raised a couple of good questions. For the people who say that the Revolutionary Communist Party would strike down all relationships, one way to respond to that is those people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Another way to respond to that is we have a constitution for a future socialist republic in North America, which lays out, starting from the day after the revolution, somebody's holding up a copy of it there, what the society would be like. It also lays out where we're trying to take the society, how we're going to work at ending the oppression and exploitation once and for all. Because when you make revolution, you got to make it with the people as they are, as they grew up, were trained, educated, socialized under the capitalist imperialist system. Now, some people are going to break with the way that socialization, that training, that education completely. Others are going to break with it a little bit, and some are going to still be stuck in it. So we're going to have to work on that. We can't get rid of the people who don't agree with us. That would be wrong. But we have to work to get them out of that mindset and into a mindset conducive to going forward to a society where there's no exploitation and oppression anymore of any kind. Okay? I mean, here's a thing to think about. We got to get people to the point where they're even beyond equality. Because sometimes equality becomes inequality. And here's an example. Let's say you've got a large family, I'm a single guy. We work the same job. You actually need more than I need. We need to get to the point where I'd be cool with you getting paid more than me because your needs are greater than mine. And I wouldn't be saying, hey, I did the same work as her, I need to have the same money. I'd be saying, no, she's got kids, she's got a family, she's got to support that family. I'm on my own, I don't need that. So that's what we're aiming for and going for. That does not come down to eradicating all relationships in society. We do want to end oppressive relationships, and there are far too many of them in this society right now. We do want to work on that, but not in the form of so there will be no more relationships. Parent and child, forget that. We're going to take your kids. Husband and wife, forget that. No, that's not how we're going to go at that. And like I said, those people don't know what they're talking about. If they want to learn, tell them to read the Constitution. As far as Bob Avakian as the leader, there are two aspects to that. One is he is the leader of the Central Committee of the party. That, in that sense, he is the leader of the party and the movement for an actual revolution. And that makes him the leader among the leaders. He is also the architect of a new framework for human emancipation. He is the one who looked at what the previous revolutions had accomplished, where they had fallen short or gone wrong. He did that in the wake of setbacks like the overthrow of revolutionary rule in China, and where other people either wanted to give up and did give up, or wanted to say we were right. Avakian has said, well, we got to actually look at whether we were right or not. Let's come to understand that very deeply. And through doing that, he identified shortcomings and errors. I see you back there. And was able to forge a new framework for going forward and making revolution, and in some ways building on and strengthening the framework that had it previously existed, but in some cases breaking with it, because he saw, okay, we were actually a little bit wrong on this. We weren't wrong overall, but we were a little bit wrong on this. So that's what it means to say Bob Avakian is the leader, not that he is the only leader. And I also spoke earlier to what it means to be a follower of Bob Avakian, and that wasn't a thing of getting in line behind us as we're behind him, putting your head down and we marching along in step and all like that. It is taking up the scientific method and approach, engaging his work, coming to understand what he's doing, and developing the ability of many more people to do the same stuff. And it won't all be on the same level that he's doing it, but they're wielding the same method and approach that he's taking up. And in that sense, becoming leaders themselves, because this revolution will require a whole lot of people who have developed leadership capability in order to do it. We're going to have a whole lot of people who can lead. But at the same time, we have a leader who is the one who has been able to develop the strategic outlook, the one been able to develop the vision of the future and how to carry that out. So that's how that comes around. And on this point of eliminating leaders, you are right. That is a big weapon in the arsenal of this system. You know, take out the head and the body will die. That's how they've gone at it again and again and again through many devious and some open and naked ways. So we have to confront that and deal with that as well. And the way to do that is to build up the kind of protection for the leader so that there are as many people as possible who know about the leader, know about the work that he's doing, know about what he's trying to accomplish through that, digging into it, checking him out, and getting a certain sense of respect for him, which then makes it more difficult for them to target him. We have to actually build the kind of scene around him where coming after him would be a big political price for the system to pay. And we got to make it as hard as possible for them to get at him, because we need that leadership. So that's what I saw on that. Why are you holding up the mic? Oh, you want to know who to go to? All right. Okay. I need to do a couple things. I'm going to take the two of you. What I think I'll do first, though, Emma wants to announce a couple of things that it's important that everybody hear.
All right, so one, I think this program's been really, really good. I just want to appreciate Carl being here and this discussion that really matters. It's not over, but we should applaud. It's not over. But, I mean, I guess there's two things I wanted to say. One, that, thanks, that it's a precious thing that we, just to highlight what Carl said, is to have a revolutionary leader like this, of this caliber, and that this country and this world has never had a leader like this before, and that exists for an actual revolution, to bring down, to overthrow, to abolish the system, and bring into being a whole other world. And it matters. And it matters that there's a force of people who are going to go out and fight to make this revolution real, even as you're learning more about it. And I think I was just thinking about the question of the democratic socialism and what you were talking about with intersectionality. And the two things related to this, I think, are that anything with the democratic socialism, and I thought you lied out a lot about changing the laws, all of this. But anything less than a revolution is going to that overthrows capitalism, imperialism, is going to completely fail to deal with the root of the problem or lead to the actual solution. And we've seen this. Look at the environment. Look at this white supremacy. Look at everything that's going on and on and on. And right now, they are fighting at the top, and they can't hold things together in the same way. This is a rare circumstance where we could actually go for it, and we have the leadership for it. And part of the struggle I think we have to have, this is related to the point of the intersectionality, is that enough of this staying in your lane and being divided by identities and, all of this and me. What about humanity? Instead of that, we have to be uniting with each other, and defending each other and going up against this system that's the source of all of the oppression that people face. And so with that, one of the things I want to actually say is that we are going this, what you started us off with, which was very important, about that we need funds to spread the word about this revolution, to keep this bookstore open. We're going to pass around a donation bin, one of the donation buckets, if someone could grab it. And people should donate very, very generously tonight. Give everything that you want to see so that we can grow this movement. We're not funded by Pepsi. We're not funded by Coca-Cola. We're not funded by the Democratic Party. This is a people's movement. And so the people are going to have to make the funds to make it happen. And if we're going to get free, we're going to have to do it ourselves. Nobody else is going to do it for us. So that's thing one. Thing two, there are donation buckets that everybody could take with them, If you have an apartment building, you have friends, you have family, revolutionary change. There might be other ideas you have too, like maybe you're a good baker, maybe you know how to make buttons, maybe you know how to sew. We want to have a barbecue out in front in Revolution Books. Maybe you would like to cook a dish. Maybe you make a good potato salad, and and we'll work together, and we'll raise the funds together and build the support. Maybe you can spread the word about the revolution. How much would it make a difference if people, you could, have one of these and have the points of attention of the revolution. And the other thing is that if any of this resonates with you, the points of attention, read them. You can join the Revolution Club today. We're recruiting, and you can talk to all of us. And everybody who has a heart for humanity is welcome to step into this revolution. So that's all I wanted to say. So step on in. Come on, the time's getting late, y'all.
Okay, I'm going to take Vanessa and Miles, and I think then I'm going to end the formal part of the program. And I ain't saying you got to go home. You can stick around and talk. But that's how far the formal part of the program is going to go.
All right. Is this on? All right. So mine was really a question towards this woman's valid question. Because we've talked about this several times, how there is a lot of misconception about the definition of communism and how communism is enacted or has been historically enacted and acted out by different political leaders within the communist movement and its, historical direction as it's been thus far. And the capitalist, imperialist, subversive movement of undermining communist movements. But I felt it was very important that she brought that up because this is something we're going to encounter in just regular conversations. People, who hear these things. And it worries me because, I'm glad we offered a safe space enough to have such a valid question come up. But it worries me because if she heard it, she's not the only one.
Right.
And where's it coming from? I don't need to know specifics, but it's just like, do we need to have seminars for religious leaders in the area? Do we, you know what I mean? Because she did mention that about, oppressive relationships. And the thing is, we can get into a whole hours-long conversation about how husband and wife is based on patriarchy and misogyny, while the Republicans hold up the family ideal to women as if it's the only thing we're catered to. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to get into those side tangents. But how do we verbally, I don't want to use such aggressive language as combat, but honestly, how do we combat these misconceptions, and how do we help just verbally to disengage them from being tethered to these, quite honestly, I mean, I don't want to say anything because it's going to come out insulting because it has nothing to do with her. It has to do more with society in general. But how do we quickly stop these conspiracies from fomenting in just verbal conversation with people? Oh, I heard this. Like, I encountered that too when I was first starting out with RF, Refuse Fascism, and then, rolling with the RefComs. And it was just like, oh yeah, I heard about your cult. But I'm just like, listen, I don't know people in cults, but none of these people act that way. However, I've talked to the RefComs and I'm like, and I've told them, that's a great reference, but 5 of you in a row don't need to say the same thing. You know what I mean? It's just like, but how do we do this? I know that's a lot more loaded question, but I feel it's something we need to touch upon. That was pretty much it.
Okay. Give it over to Miles.
I'm going to steal a line from Carl. The short answer and the long answer. The short answer is you go to the greatest living scientist on planet Earth. Scientist of society, scientist of revolution, and scientist of changing the world. How do you sum up and understand the long nightmare of humanity of living in class-divided society where one revolution after another for the last 2,000 years has resulted in one society after another being people fighting back, and then you have another oppressive society? 2, how do you sum up the experience of the last 150 years of the socialist and communist revolutions, which up to this moment are the highest pinnacle of liberation on the road to ending all oppression and exploitation of humanity? There's one person on planet Earth who's done it. One person. And that's Bob Avakian. That's not me dodging the question, but the answer in terms of, because I hear you're responding to what she's saying, the answer, there's a lot of distortions. There's a lot of crap. There's a lot of BS that's out there. No wonder that the system that actually is directly challenged by the communist revolution is going to allow so much distortion and slander to propagate, especially when there's been no liberating revolutions over the last 60 years. Okay. Everybody look at this. This is a book called From Ike to Mao and Beyond, My Journey from Mainstream America to Revolutionary Communists. It's Bob Avakian's memoir. He talks about in this book, he went into the Black Panther leader Eldridge Cleaver's apartment in the Bay Area, probably 1967. And he saw on the wall Bob Avakian saw on the wall a picture of Mao Zedong, the leader of the Chinese Revolution, and Bob was scared. Wow, this guy is a tyrant. You know, all the bullshit he had heard about communism. And he didn't ask Eldridge Cleaver about it, because he talked to him on the telephone afterwards, and he said, "Hey, Eldridge, why do you have that picture of Mao Zedong on your wall?" And you know what Eldridge Cleaver said? He said, "Mao Zedong is the baddest motherfucker on planet Earth." So you just walked into, all of us, we just walked into the apartment of the Revcoms. Bob Avakian's the baddest motherfucker on planet Earth. How can we get up out of this? And that was my response, because there's a few questions here to that. The thing I was going to say when I raised my hand originally is that I hope, first of all, I agree with Emma. Thank you, Carl. Not just because this is a thing that needs to be talked about, but it's inspiring to hear you speak, and it is impressive and important to be able to break things down without watering them down. That's something that we all learned from Bob Avakian, and I think Carl Dix is doing an excellent job, and it's inspiring and important. And I hope we can do a lot more discussions like this. But, you know, in the last 16 months since the beginning of COVID, since this pandemic, you know, Bob Avakian's written almost 100 articles. In the last 15 years, he's given comprehensive, in-depth speeches about the science of revolution and how you could actually really take down the most brutal empire in the history of humanity through a revolution. I hope that this great event or discussion that Carl Dix led and speech that he gave is a provocation to everyone here. Those who've never heard of Bob Avakian before and those of us who've been reading him for a long time. This brother's got dozens and dozens and dozens of books. And when you read it, there's actually answers to every single question that everyone has brought up here. He actually answers this thing around intersectionality and refutes it. And why as Emma was starting to get into, why adjudicating the different privileges between people as opposed to making a revolution to overthrow this system and emancipate all of humanity, instead of having the oppression Olympics while we're still living underneath this system. What she was saying about communism, what does it seek to transform? Bob Avakian gets into that, but more than anything else, when you read Bob Avakian and watch his speeches, and I hope you're inspired, and you will be challenged, and you will be brought outside your comfort zone, and you might feel a little like Carl was talking about when he met him in the mid-1970s. Because he's going to take you there. He's going to tell it to you like it is. But when you read his stuff, more than just the direct answers he gives, learn from his method and learn from what he's actually doing. Because he's not just breaking it down, he's getting to the essence of why things are the way they are and how they could be different. So I hope all of us who've been reading Avakian and have even had the opportunity to hear him speak in person, and those who are just discovering him for the first time, really buy some of these books, watch these speeches, and be provoked and be inspired.
Okay. Look, a couple of things I want to leave you with. One is Wednesday, August the 4th, 7 o'clock, here in Revolution Books.
Yeah. Sorry.
Andy Z is going to be speaking, giving reflections on this article. This is a rare time when revolution becomes possible. Why that is so and how to seize on this rare opportunity. And if you're somebody who wants to see this horror ended, wants to see a different way for people, then you got to come out to this and bring some other people out to this, because he's going to get into why the infighting at the top of the system is creating a situation where revolution can become possible. How it could be an important part of bringing forth the conditions within which a revolution could be made, and what we need to do now to get ready and in position to seize on it. This is going to be an important discussion. You should definitely come out. I also don't want you to forget that Revolution Books is going to show the entire video, Bob Avakian, for the liberation of black people and the emancipation of all of humanity. And you said you were going to show it.
Well, that's up to you. I'm hoping you'll come back and do it. So
I'm
we're thinking maybe next Saturday afternoon.
I'm wide open on it.
Okay.
So
Make
come
sure
back.
You're on our list.
Come
You'll
get
the notice
hooked in so that you'll get the notice. Come back. Let's watch this film and let's talk about how do we get this guy more widely known? How do we get it so many more people know about him, know about the work that he's doing, or learning what kind of guy he is? And then we can also talk about how we work on that, how we bring others to get into this. So come back next week. I'm going to be here because I'm going to check out that video. I've seen it before, but I want to watch it again. So those two things I wanted to make sure that people left here with. And look, I see, I don't know where Vanessa went, but she's in the back?
She's bending
Oh, she's bending over. Look, in terms of people buying into shit that's getting spread about the revolution, we got to struggle with people who want to see a better world. There's some things in this article from Avakian, I call them the insteads. You know, and instead of staying in your lane and going for self while this system is moving even more decisively to crush any hope for a world worth living in, people need to be looking at the bigger picture, focusing on the greater interest of humanity and the possibility for a better world and acting to make this a reality. Instead of snarking and sniping at each other and being divided by identities, people should be working to unite everyone from every part of society who can be united in the fight against oppression and injustice with the goal of putting an end to this system that is the source of this oppression and injustice. Instead of finding excuses to go along with the way things have been, standing apart from or even bad-mouthing the revolution, people need to get with this revolution and not throw away the rare opportunity to be part of bringing something much better into being. That's the one I was actually looking for. And look, the revolution has got to get out there. We've got to be out in all the different ways that we can so that people are actually encountering the real revolution.
Right.
And some of the same people who are encountering people telling them bullshit about the real revolution. And then they can compare what the revolution is actually doing, what it is actually saying, to the bullshit that they're hearing, and then they can work through on that and see, okay, that's what so-and-so told me, but here they are. Here's what they're doing. And then they can compare and contrast that and decide what's in the interest of humanity, what is actually about people getting free. So that's what I wanted to do tonight. And I'm glad everybody could come.